us, asking for ideas, and I don't think it was.
I think it was like an informal thing.
Okay.
There was something, you know,
Never got off.
the long and short of it is, right, and it certainly doesn't exist now. Hey there.
7 o'clock. Moment for getting it settled.
Everyone, Miles.
Let's call the meeting to order, the October meeting of the Rollinsford Planning Board. As most of you probably know, I had to resign as the chair of this committee because I was recently appointed to the select board. So the first order of business tonight is to elect officers on this board.
Sorry, turn this on.
That's okay. Can,
I'd like to nominate John Hinsman.
Before, let's have a discussion.
Well, we have to put him on the, well.
yeah, we'll nominate second, have a discussion.
All right.
Is there a second?
I would second that.
Okay, so let's open it up for debate. Are there any other nominations? I don't know if we take them all at once.
Awesome, thank you.
Are you open to this position?
Please. Told myself not to be.
So I can share with you my experience being chair. It's not that much work.
Okay.
And that pulling together the agenda, Sarah is very easy to work with. There is a lot of signing of things and coordinating that, and running the meeting and keeping order.
Okay. I know Kevin has before said he's not interested. I know Kevin is much more experienced than me. Let me just throw this out there. Caroline, what about you? You've gotten an incredible enthusiasm for this. And I'm not saying I don't, but I mean, you've impressed me right off the bat at how enthusiastic you are about this.
It's
And
an internal part of the town, you know, a lot of the politics happening within town itself.
Okay, so let me address that. It's not that I'm necessarily in an objective, abstract way opposed to that, except to say, well, I'm really not looking for any more outside duties, but aside from that, because nobody is, right? There is a potential, it is being evaluated, and it could perhaps come to be that the board changes my title. And if the select board makes me a town administrator, which may or may not happen, I'm not sure if that is even a conflict, I don't know that it is, but it would be a perceived,
You could see that being a gray area.
it would not be
That'd
a
make
great
it
idea.
eligible.
Well, I don't know that it would, but I just feel as though that's a bit of an impropriety, even if it's not officially. That being said, That's not today.
That hasn't happened.
that hasn't happened. But, you know, I think there's a little bit to be said about stability on a board and not having a lot of change.
I'd be willing to strike a grand bargain, which is you become the chairman. If in fact you get hired as the town administrator, I would assume chairman of the planning board.
Seems like a very fair offer.
The other thing I wanted to say is that, you know, we bend over backwards, I think, for applicants, and Miles said one of the things that takes some time is signing stuff. We can go back to saying,
Yeah.
you can be prepared, bring them on into a planning board meeting and sign it then. You know, we're just trying to, if you don't want to, if whoever is chairman
Or
says,
bring it to the
I don't wanna
following
do it.
planning board
Right,
meeting.
I don't want to, I mean, it would be different with you because you're here. But John would be, it might be a struggle. You work, I would assume, I don't know where your office is.
Well, I work in Dover and I'm an attorney.
Yeah.
I have a part-time staff person, my daughter, who I pay her pittance. But that was the agreement that basically we struck, because I wasn't looking for someone. And I don't want to go into too much detail, but I am basically the entire, I mean, I am the administration, I'm the what's the word for the production line, the factory line,
Right.
I'm sales, I'm billing, and as you can see, I tend to get here just before 7. I'm just concerned that I don't have the time, even for the additional stuff, and I'm being honest about that. If I had, if I was in a different job where I wasn't 95% of what I earn comes from my direct efforts, I think I would feel differently, but.
May I inquire as to Kevin's reluctance?
It's a case of the time as well. I don't think I can do the position justice.
Okay, so what if you were offered some kind of assistance with that? Because as Miles says, Sarah, can help, and Sarah's good that way. And there could be other outside assistance in prepping agendas or whatever else you need.
I still don't think I can do it justice.
Justice.
I don't think it'd be fair to the town.
Oh, could you define that? I'm so sorry, but
I
I don't mean to be, okay, that's fair. I mean, that's honest at least. I just,
You don't want to, or you don't want to define it, or you don't want to be the chair?
I know that it's fair to say, Kevin, but when Pat was gonna
Back away
leave,
from the whole world
he had
of-
said before to Pat, and I know he's got some personal reasons, but I don't know what the personal reasons are, but I'm gonna be saying, Pat, I have personal reasons why I don't wanna be the chairman, and so I know he's had a long-standing,
Yeah.
that's why I brought that up, I knew he didn't wanna be the
Yep.
chairman.
Yep.
You know why he didn't become the chairman, he would have been a natural successor, no offense, Miles.
No,
Right.
When Pat had left.
I just say that for exactly those reasons, because you've been here for a long time and you know stuff, and you are well versed.
But I mean, it is tough to be here the times that I have. I make it a priority, and just as you do, to be here for my meetings, and beyond that, there's very little free time.
Okay, so then, okay, so I'll take John's offer on the condition, and I don't even know if I can even really put this condition out there, but I think we all need to work on we need some fresh blood, we need some recruiting. We've got 2 professional planners at least that work for other municipalities living in Rollinsford, and I can't get them to show up. And they would be invaluable here. In lieu of that, we still have an alternate position open, and I think we need more, now you can't, now you're not qualified, so,
That's
if
an
I
age-old
become not really
I will say
qualified,
that Pat, I do think Pat made an effort during a couple of our more contentious applications when these seats were full. Pat did reach out to people, I don't remember who, but there's the one woman that lives downtown, she just often comes, and he asked her to come. Who?
Celia.
Yeah, and there was a couple other people that, you remember,
There was a couple people that spoke up at meetings and then it never went anywhere.
yeah, it never went anywhere.
Never went
it's
anywhere.
just really,
It's-
it's an essential function, and the idea that it's staffed by whatever warm body we can find is really appalling and a bit of a liability. And so, I don't know what to say about that, because you have to be a resident, and we have a limited pull from. I'm just putting it out there that I'm concerned about it, because when you've got a 5-member board and then 2 people can potentially not ever step in as chair.
This has been an issue for,
Yes, that's why we adjusted a
15
quorum only
years.
being 3, because there was meetings.
we
would
went
come
from
together
7 to
before
5,
people.
because we couldn't,
We just couldn't.
Now, I don't know how much we get out the information, but, I mean, with the election coming up, what's to say you can't put something out in the hallway
Sure.
that says planning board, openings, and everybody that doesn't get their email or, come to the meetings for their own purposes, I mean, that's one place they're gonna be gathering, so.
There are also a lot of laws about what you can display or can't display, and so,
But I think that would be
There is
related only to
there
the
is.
town, not to the election.
the election's not even gonna be here.
To that point, it's gonna be at the,
Oh, that's right.
yeah.
But still, you could ask for volunteers. You know, I think, you know, I think we've put notices out before in years past.
Yeah, and there's one currently out, that's like a week.
But I
old.
think what was more effective is to say, hey, someone's really good, I'm gonna go see him, because it doesn't seem like,
Right.
we're all busy,
That's-
everybody is, you know, in every town across New Hampshire, so it's not unique to Rollinsford. I think, and people see that advertisement and they just
Yeah,
throw it away. But if you call and say, hey, we really need some help, can you come back, or can you know?
That sense of community service just isn't there anymore in most people, the desire to wanna contribute, it just,
Well, you
just
got, I
doesn't
mean,
seem
you
to
have
be there. I know
three
you
engaged
try to
selectmen.
create
I
it, but.
mean, I know you've never, I don't think you've ever had a problem finding a good selectmen. The zoning board has been full for years, haven't they? So it's this board that struggles, you know?
And it was town meeting where Kevin and I
That's how
got
we came to
involved,
be.
that's how we got involved, because we were at town meeting.
You know, the other guy that
There
was,
were a group of
I
us.
shudder to say this, but what was his name, John? He's now gone, Dave
Patrick.
Nyland.
Oh,
Dave
Oh,
was
yeah.
a thorn in our side for years, and then he became a pretty good board member.
Yeah,
He was good. And it's unfortunate that we lost Dave. I don't know if there's another Dave Nyland out there, but he did it, he did his homework.
So 2 doors up for me is Nancy Carmer, I don't know.
Yep, she's great, she used to serve on the board.
Yeah,
Serve on the board.
so I'm gonna take another pass at her. I approached her last year when we first moved in, and she was like, the meetings are too long. I'm like, they're not. I don't think, I mean,
nothing fair to
They
say.
4
were,
hours.
they used to be.
Yeah, they have
Yeah.
been in
And
the
it's
past.
just once a
The
month.
mic was
It's just once a
there.
month.
They were long.
yeah. Um,
And we can remedy some of those problems too. You know, if people feel like the meetings, I don't think the meetings have been long for years, because we haven't had heavy agendas. But if it got to the point where we were meeting till 10 o'clock, the chairman could say, we're not taking any new business after 9:30.
Yep.
And you'd be home by 9:45, or whatever it is. I don't think that hasn't been a concern for a couple of years.
No, Pat basically was like, the meeting's done by 9, you're out of here at 9.
Yeah.
When I started, that was the,
Right, he controlled the
So-
agenda, what items get placed on the agenda, and he could anticipate what the time frame would be for each.
But
of
that's
them.
not been an issue, so I don't, I
That's
think
been that
late
much
meetings,
development going
that's a,
on.
that's a lame excuse.
I agree.
Tell me, come up with a new one.
yeah, it's not like, because I've seen old notes that meeting was like 11.
That's a little late, I mean,
Wow.
there's a lot to get done, but, you know, you gotta be realistic with the audience. So, where are we at?
I think we have a share.
There doesn't seem to be an alternative, so I guess that's the way it is.
And I don't think there's a problem if you became town administrator, I don't think there's a
There
problem.
may not be a legal one, I think there's
It
definitely
could
a
be, it
perception,
could be a
political
perception problem,
Yeah.
problem.
but we
We
can
can
cross
address
that bridge
that.
when we get to it.
All right.
Hypothetically, if that was to develop for Caroline, what sort of timeframe would we be talking about on offer being extended, if it's even heard, but just hypothetically?
Well, the deliberative session is in January, the election, so we'll go.
February 2nd, deliberative session.
I'm sorry, yeah.
It's okay.
And then,
But the budget has to be in order and presented to the public in January. So, you know, they're working on their budget. They also have to review this year's budget, you know, so who knows?
So
But
it seems
There are
like
3
it's-
people, you
yeah.
know?
January, February, March-ish, if hypothetically an offer.
I mean, everything's
extended.
all completely out and open. I just wanna be upfront about that.
Sure.
Would this be another suggestion that all three, everybody in this room, me, excepting me, come up with 3 names? And just write a little card out, hey, you know, we really, with just something personal, or maybe a phone call, you know, that people might not ignore.
I ask people at the library all the time.
I approach people, I mean, I know people who've been in town 20 years and just,
And I've approached a couple of my neighbors too, and they don't, I mean, I think this, you're right, the lack of, I know all towns have it, but everyone is so involved in their own worlds and demands of their life, it's really tough to get. to push
So,
people
John,
along
what is your
business.
perception about I'm sorry, I
No, I
didn't
mean,
mean
good,
to
it's fine.
interrupt you. Rollinsford, as opposed to other, I imagine we're not the only small town that has this problem.
I think I don't know if I was talking to you on the telephone or I was talking to somebody recently about my perception of Rollinsford. I think the biggest thing that I see is that there's just not a ton going on here. And I would venture a guess that, I would suspect that people would say they're not gonna make a difference being on the planning board. Whereas you go to Dover or Somersworth, every night there's, twice a month or once, whenever they're meeting, there's probably 5 or 6 applications, you're making decisions, there's a real impact. Here, we might go 2 or 3 months without an application.
Which could change at any time.
But I also think that also means we have time to do other stuff that other towns don't have time for. So, but as I said, Pat was not afraid to say, we're not meeting in July. We don't have much going on.
Can we do
We're-
that?
Sure. If you don't have an application,
I think by statute you're supposed to.
I think by statute.
if you don't have,
Yeah, but if you can't raise a quorum.
Towns do it all the time.
Yep.
And if you don't have any applications, I would, I'm just saying that there's ways, to try to entice people early into the meeting. But I suspect that may be what it is, that they just don't feel like they're doing much. I don't know.
There's also a huge learning curve. I think people are intimidated.
The demographics too, we've got,
Yeah.
between young people who have a vested interest in town that's maybe looking at doing things within town, versus people that are in the latter ages of the more stepping back part of their lives and, not gonna say retiring, but just people that are kind of done with the whole being busy in life phase.
Yep.
You need more people that are, have plans of doing things within town or, like to see the progress of the town because it pertains to them and some things that they might have.
But I will tell you that I would suspect that if you went around the seacoast, most planning boards are made up of people with gray hair. There's some young people, but by and large, people are older. So, Rollinsford is certainly an older town than most, but actually by a lot. But, yeah, there's a lot of retirees because they have time. They're not working, they're willing to give some time. So, I don't know if we're not tapping into them. I don't know I guess I don't know. I don't know what's different between,
We do have a newsletter going out shortly, next month or so, that we can put a little blurb in there. as
I
well.
just think if everybody could approach a few people and
Yep.
try that,
Yep.
I mean, and we've had some, like Judy was I think she was a
Yes.
phenomenal planning board member, and it was a real bummer when she got done, We've had some pretty good ones that we've lost in the last few years. And Pat was, I know Pat wasn't everybody's favorite, but he worked hard. He did, he really tried, I think. So I don't know.
So why don't we get a nomination on the floor? I don't know if you need to withdraw your nomination.
I'll withdraw.
Okay.
I nominate Caroline.
I'll second that nomination.
So for voting purposes, I'll appoint Glenn also to be a voting member. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Congratulations.
Congratulations.
It's your meeting.
You wanna take over the head street?
This chairwoman.
No, I'll let you stay there.
I can get rid of this chair, it's awful. Mike likes that.
Mike likes that chair, I know.
Icebreaker.
Yes, it is.
So Kevin is still vice chair.
Actually.
Let's do a vice
Yeah, we
chair,
should
if
do
we
it.
would.
I think
I'm
you
I-
are
I'm
currently vice
happy
chair.
to continue to be vice chair if someone, but if someone else wants it, I'm happy to have someone else take it.
John is, we should just leave it well enough alone, right?
Since we have one,
Yeah, I don't think we,
I don't know that we
I was
have to.
thinking, I don't know if we need to do it either, but if we need to do this for me, I'll be fine, if not, fine.
I don't think it's still part of your term, you're still within term.
All right, so be it. I did not print the agenda,
okay.
but I believe we have an application. If you wanna step over to the table, we'll hear you. And let you get out of here while we go on and on.
Oh, we have an applicant here for the
He happens to be a resident, how about that?
Hey, Caroline, just so you know, I'm going to recuse myself from participating in this, just because was the acting chair of the ZBA when we had Mr. Jennison's case, so I won't be participating in any discussion of the law.
And I'm also recusing myself as my brother.
Very good, thank you. So we've got Glenn, Kevin, and myself voting on this one.
Good evening, my name is Philip Jennison. I live on 125 Bear Road. I bought my lot in 1985, built my house, and lived there ever since. Probably in 1982, Ruth and George Marston bought this back lot, and George has passed since, but Ruth has paid taxes on it as a house lot ever since. Last summer, she called me up, wanted me to buy that lot from her. Over the years, people tried to buy that lot, but it's such a terrible lot that nobody could do anything with it. So she was trapped and paid taxes on it, knowing that she probably paid $15,000 for that lot, I'm guessing, years ago. And over the years, the town's assessed it. In 2014, it was assessed $32,900. She's paying $890 taxes on that back land. So over the years, she's probably had $40,000 into that land, but she couldn't do anything with it. She approached me and wanted to know if I'd buy it from her, and she hadn't paid the taxes in a couple of years. So she basically just wanted me to buy it and pay the taxes off, which she owed like, I don't know, $1,700, $1,800. I ended up paying $3,500 for it and just bought it from her. Now, I went down, did a perk test on it, just to see if I could do anything with it. And this land, over the years, the town has, zoning has changed where you need 2 acres of upland, which you can't have just 2 acres of 2 acres land. You have to have 2 acres of good land to build on nowadays. So both my lot and this lot are non-conforming because part of my back land is got some steep slopes. This one, this back land that she owns, has got a lot of steep slopes plus a swamp. So it's a pretty tough piece of land to do anything with. So if anybody do anything with it, would have been me. And what I hired surveyors and engineers to try and see if I could cut off a piece of mine and put a piece over here. So I'd make a buildable lot here. My wife and I were gonna build a small retirement ranch, if we could get it through all the planning board and zoning and everything. There was also issues with this land about this Class 6 road. And originally, it said you had to bring this road up to town standards. Well, nobody seemed to have any clarity on what had to do with this road to get a permit to build on it. Some people said you had to build a Class 5 road, go to town meeting, which would be next year. Some people said, last year, the selectmen had a meeting and adopted some guidelines saying that you could build 600 feet of road for a single residence, up to 600 feet long, and put one single residence. But they adopted those guidelines, but at that time I was encouraged to saying that maybe I could build a house there. But nobody seemed to give me any clarity on what I could do with this road. Well, I had to make it a Class 5 road. And if you make it a Class 5 road, then you want the town to plow it because it's a town road, which the town doesn't want to do. So it's kind of up in the air what's going to happen with the road to get access to the house. So we went to the zoning board 3 weeks ago, and we get denied. And basically, because of the non-conformity of both lots, I was making this lot more conforming, given some good land, and but mine had some steep slopes, made it non-conforming. So, and also my neighbor was complaining about the drainage. Drainage is actually no issue because they're all drains away from our land, but to fight with her with a lawyer, I'd have to get a hydrologist and engineers and lawyers, and they go thousands more dollars. Also, to get power down to here, I would probably, there used to be, like I say, telephone poles down here, but to put overhead electric in, you'd have to cut off the trees on the side of the road. Nobody would like that, to put overhead electric in. So to put underground electric down here, public service would charge about $20,000, and I'd have to pay excavators and underground piping and stuff to get there, another 5 to 10 grand. And then the issue would probably be getting an easement. I think there is an easement now with the, as far as the telephone company, electric company, because that Old Town Road, but there again, you have to have a lawyer to figure it all out. It just got to be such a mess that the wife and I decided we're gonna give up. So what we propose to do tonight is to eliminate this lot line and just combine the two lots together, and eliminate the back lot, 7-3, and make all this 7-4. So I'll have a 4-acre lot. That way, I'm not getting taxed as a house lot, I'm just getting taxed as back land. And I'll have a 4-acre lot with my house. Nobody can ever do anything with this land, and it'll just be a 4-acre lot. And that's what I come from the planning board for tonight, just to see if they will approve wiping out this lot line and making it one lot. I think that's basically all we're trying to do. This lot line is right where the stone wall is, we'll make it a 4-acre lot,
Okay,
so.
thank you. Shall we vote on the completeness of the application before we discuss?
I'll make a motion to accept the application as complete.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That was just the three of us. Alrighty. Any questions or comments?
But you're simply looking at eliminating the lot line as it exists on paper, you're not changing any sort of, not clearing, not changing any
Nope.
of the
I can't, nope,
vegetation, stone wall, nothing like that?
nope, nothing, I won't touch it, won't do anything out back there anymore, can't.
But
Just let it
just
go back.
so you're clear though, Kevin, Phil has every right to
Right,
take that stone wall away, he has every right to clear the land,
Right.
it's his
It was
land.
just a question, right?
Yeah, sure, I just don't,
I don't have any intention
Yeah.
on doing it, building it.
I just don't want for you to think that he can't
No,
do that.
he has that privilege as
Right.
of both lots.
Yep.
So, we would, so you still have this jagged edge there.
That was what I get proposed.
This is,
Right.
this is the lot as it exists.
It's-
That's
it's-
the
Right.
lot line. This is what Phil came in a couple months ago to us, showing
Right,
this is
so
what
we
he
would
wants
need
do.
to have all that removed from the
No,
final
no,
plans,
no.
no?
That
No,
never got
because
approved, so
This never got approved.
that's just proposed.
He has the
Oh,
voluntary
just
lot
that,
merger
right,
form.
there you go.
He didn't even need to provide this,
Right,
it's not
I'm just trying to
required.
show you what
Yeah.
went on.
yes,
Yeah.
got it, thank you.
Years ago, before the lot merger statute came into
Mm-hmm.
being, people had to prepare a plan like this showing the lot line to be eliminated. Then the legislature changed the law and allowed you to.
This seems a lot more efficient.
Yeah,
But it is my understanding, as I've done a merger similar, that once you create this merger, you cannot then separate these lots
No.
over again.
I'd have to go back to the planning board to have them re-divided in a
Right,
non-conformance, so
because
there's no way
that
they
does
would.
not
do it.
exist as an
You
option
can't-
at this point going forward.
If I leave these two separate lots, I could possibly sell this lot to a builder or
Someone
someone
wanted to make the fight.
with deeper pockets, so you can let them fight it. I don't wanna do it, and I don't want, it's such a terrible piece of lot, the only way it would've worked is if I took this land off of here. Nobody can really do anything with this lot. But going forward, I don't wanna be paying $800 a year for a piece of woods out back.
Right.
And if I eliminate this, it's back land, the town are going to assess me at back land. And he shouldn't be taxed as a house lot anymore, because they proved it's not a house lot.
Right, it
Well-
doesn't exist as a buildable lot per guidelines as it stands now today.
It's grandfathered, but it's really not a buildable lot.
So,
Standing alone, it can't be built on, because the only place you can put a septic system is in this corner. The rest of it's steep slopes, you'd have to go back to the zoning board, which are gonna deny you a building permit. And a variance, because of the steep slopes. So it's really not a buildable lot. I wanna get rid of it as a buildable lot, I just wanna keep it as all woods and one piece of land.
for what it's worth, and I can't say for certain, but I can't imagine that it would change its assessed value. It would
It
just
has
be.
to. They
Because it's
can't-
still whatever the slope is, it's still whatever the wet is. It would, if it were a back lot,
But that's what I'm saying. if you-
undeveloped, like if anything, it's becoming part of a house lot that is developed and developable, it would potentially, I don't know, I just don't wanna, necessarily sanction that thought.
Backland in Rollinsford used to be worth $1,500 an acre on Ed Jansen within the last 5 to 6 years. When him and Paul Conway used to look at backland in town, that's how they assessed backland like this. Undeveloped land that people had a big piece of land, they would assess the house lot, and then the land out back, they'd assess it an extra $1,500 an acre for the woods. without it being a current use.
So,
In current use is a lot less than that, but you have to have 10 acres.
well, right, so that being said, if your desire to do this hinges on its current and potential assessed value, you could
I'll
potentially.
fight with the assessor on that once.
Well, but I don't
I
want you to like have done this and then regret it because the assessed value is not what you thought it would be. Like, if it would be prudent to speak to the assessing firm before,
No.
okay.
No, I mean, because they're gonna have to drop the assessment on it. They had it assessed at 32,900 for 2 acres because they were assessing it
Well,
as a house lot.
They're gonna do whatever they're gonna do,
Oh,
and
yeah.
once you
Oh,
do
yeah.
this, your only recourse is to file for an abatement.
Well, I will, yeah,
Okay.
if I have to, yeah. But what I'm saying is now it'll be one house lot, and they're gonna have to reassess it as one basic house lot.
Yes.
They have to eliminate that as a separate house lot, it'll be one.
So you are comfortable with the fact that we're not stating that
Right.
we have any influence on
No,
how it's
I know,
viewed as
I
far as
realize that,
assessment and
yeah.
taxation? You assume all responsibility for.
Right, well, I already have because of what?
But yeah.
But there's no guarantee that
Oh, no, no.
taxation is gonna change, and we're not,
Or
we're not
do
trying to
it.
represent that it will.
No, I don't expect you to, like I say, that's another fight. It just gets to the point where you have to fight with everybody.
Okay.
It just gets to the point, it gets too expensive and too foolish.
So we really didn't mean, you're right, it's just it's a voluntary merger.
Or you can sign
They're
their
owned
own.
by the same, it's owned by the same party, both lots.
And to throw one other thing into this, I own some apartments in Elliott, and I bought a 2-acre piece of land years ago, and the town of Elliott rezoned it so that you had to have 4-acre piece of land to put a duplex on it. Well, I bought the piece next to it, it was 15 acres, and I put a whole unit on it. Well, a couple of years later, I had 2 separate lots. Well, a couple of years later, they merged them back together again, because what they did, they rezoned it, said you had to have 4 acres for a duplex, they only had it 2, and where it was contiguous, they made it all one big piece of land now. New Hampshire doesn't have that statute anymore. These are both non-conforming. If you have one non-conforming lot and a conforming lot, you make it all as one. Well, New Hampshire doesn't do that anymore, and that's why I put both in the same name, because I didn't have to worry about that. But I learned years ago that, but now they've changed the statute where you can have 2 separate lots, and even though they're non-conforming, they can stay as separate lots. But that, he hadn't nailed this issue, but,
Right, it's your choice to merge them if you wish, that's your right as owner of both parcels.
I just want to merge it so that it's just one piece of land, and if I ever do so, years from now, it'll be one 4-acre land, piece of land instead of a 2-acre piece. But I just want to eliminate the lot line and eliminate basically that lot, off the town.
Do you have any, no?
Nope.
Any other thoughts, concerns?
I mean, my feeling is as long as somebody's willing to merge their lots, it's a good thing for the town, so. I mean, it's, can't do anything with it, why not?
I think it's a win-win for everyone, because now nobody can ever do anything with that. Go back and-
I think it's absolutely stupid that the planning board approved this back in
Well,
the day.
years
As a
ago,
lot.
exactly, I mean, that lot was a terrible lot.
Yeah,
From the get-go in 1982, and I always knew it was back there since I built.
yeah.
And I've heard.
They should never have created it, though.
Well, yeah,
It was a
so
different-
Mrs. Marston bought it, she was trapped, she's in her 80s now, and she's been paying taxes on it all these years. They might have tried to build on it years ago, and they probably could have done something out here with the steep slopes, because back then, you didn't have to come in front of the zoning board for variance. So they might have got creative and brought in a lot of fill and done something out here, but it would have been a tough piece to build on right from the get-go. And like I say, why they approved this piece with all these steep slopes, and it was a tough piece right from the beginning. And they shouldn't even approved it. And then they put these conditions on it, which made it unbuildable pretty much for anybody. And I'm the only guy that hadn't even had a chance to build on it. And I had to get creative to try and do it. And I give up. I spent enough on it that I don't want to spend any more going forward. I'd have to get lawyers and hydrologists and fight with the town and fight with every board. And then Mike Roll says he won't even approve a building permit on a Class 6 road, so you have to fight with the selectmen after that, so it's not worth it. Would have come back to you guys to get that lot line adjustment. So I just feel that it's it solves about everything about women, keep everybody happy.
All right. Is there a motion on the floor to accept the merger?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, you got it.
Easy as all that.
Oh, yes.
I see planning board chair, like one of these looks more like an original than the other. I don't know how much that matters.
I was more
The one I
worried
gave
about
you.
recorded. Like, are you, do we?
It's gonna go through all the same process to my
Okay,
mind.
so you're gonna record it?
Well, somebody else in the office.
Oh, okay, the
But
town.
yes, the town will
I'm
do
sorry,
it.
Yes. the town's
Yes.
gonna record it. Okay.
And the cost for that recording?
Yeah, sorry, what?
Paul Palmer said
Does
he
it cost
recorded
that
for me,
much?
so that, I'd incur the cost, but,
Well, you'll incur the cost, but the town's gonna record it.
okay.
Because we had issues, Phil, with
Yeah.
people not recording stuff, so the new policy of this board is that we're gonna record everything. So it may not be recorded tomorrow,
No,
like
okay.
in the next couple. No, they'll tell you what, it's only an 8x11, so I mean, I'm sure it's not, it's not gonna be expensive to record.
This one?
Yeah, I think we're good. All right, so, if you hold on a second, I'll make a copy of this for you. We're still gonna record it, but.
Make it give a call. Excellent. You guys want to fit insurance? Once a month? Yep. Remember when I did the Shinad subdivision up there, and I was thinking of running for selectman. I said, oh, no, at night. I said, wow.
Planning board's a lot less tedious.
Well, that's what I'm thinking,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
It really is.
Planning board, that's what I'm saying, it just got to be, I remember Ed did it for years, and the town, what he had it for all the years they had him.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he was kind of a pain sometimes, but he kept the tax down, and he did well. But I just felt that that was tough, me and my selectmen.
So that's your copy. The filing fee is $50 and then there will, made out to the town. And then we're going to need, John, I think 2 checks, 2 blank checks, which we will take to the registry.
Made up to the Stratford County Registry of Deeds.
Yep.
And then we will let you know what they are when that's filed. So if you wanna, once we receive those checks at the office, then we'll go file the
Yeah.
the
I'll
merger.
talk to Paul in the morning, and figure out what he might come down and see you and bring it to you.
Okay,
Because he might even go there for you if you wanted to, but, at the registry, so. No, take care of it.
okay, thank you. Very good.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, John, for, so we can all stop receiving the mail.
Told you.
Yeah, yes. I did not review I was remiss in never reviewing the agenda. I know that we have regulations to talk about and changes in the zoning for town meeting.
I'm just trying to find the actual agenda.
I searched for it on my computer too, and
So I'm fairly certain I sent it out.
I know you
Yeah,
did,
oh,
because I
okay,
know I
yeah.
received it,
You got it.
I couldn't
yes.
find it in my sent mail, my inbox is a mess now.
But you mentioned the election, which we did, the lot merger, and then just discussion of potential changes for the,
So, in order for it to get on the ballot for February, or,
In March
March,
is the election. We need to have public hearings
hearing.
by,
December at the latest, I think.
Starting-
there are dates in December, January, I'm not sure.
Okay.
But for sure, I think we need to identify what are the things, and, zoning, I would think is the priority because we've got deadlines on that to make sure.
That's the only thing you have a deadline on.
Because the other things we can do at
You
any
can do
time.
it on a rolling basis, yeah.
Okay, so, there are 2 things minimally that I want to discuss about zoning. The first one is that it says in there that only the select board will sign off on building permits.
Right.
So, we should consider changing that to say select board, or its delegate.
Mhm.
I wouldn't even wanna say building inspector, because I think they should have the power to delegate that to whomever they wanna delegate to.
Well, if you were to as delegate, it still could be the building inspector.
Carolyn, is
Right,
that in
but you
zoning,
have
is that in
flexibility.
zoning? And
It
where
is in zoning, it's in building permits in the end, under building permits.
Do you know where?
It would be good to have a copy. Let me check, sorry.
On page 93, there's discussion of the CO issued by the select.
Yes, and it's in that area. I believe.
Oh, right.
So it's in section 13 enforcement, 13 is
Yes.
building permits.
Yes, it's in the, page 84, the first paragraph. Until a separate, permit has been, all right, so we go, in the first paragraph, it says Board of Selectmen.
Period. For a second period.
And then in paragraph number 3 below, it says each permit by the Board of Selectmen.
Yep.
And I just think every reference to Board of Selectmen in that sentence, in
Or
that,
their
that
designee.
section. They're actually, I'm sorry, what?
We're just gonna change every reference to Board of Selectmen to Board of Selectmen or their designee?
Yes.
Yeah. Is that the only two places it appears?
No, God, no.
There are two in that first paragraph, and then there's another reference in paragraph 3 underneath.
Yep. Here.
And then 4, there's another one. I just think in section 13, you're gonna say,
It's the beginning of every
every reference to
paragraph.
Board of Selectmen.
Yes.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
In section 13. Actually, it's in section 13.1, right?
Yeah, I don't see it too.
And then also in section, which I don't like this, but it's the way it is. Let's see here, it's page 93. The certificate of occupancy?
Yeah, that's a similar situation.
I suspect you don't follow this format, but it says you need a special permit, or what does it say? Occupancy and use of building, gear, construction.
Yeah, but that also is
Oh,
referenced
yeah,
to.
you gotta apply for a certificate of occupancy. I don't think that probably happens, but I don't know if the CO is issued by the selectmen or
It,
the,
just like building permits,
Okay,
is
so-
prepared by Tom and then approved by the board.
so that's okay.
No, because
Because
it
you
would
want
be
Tom to
nice
be able to sign it?
if the board chooses to do that,
Okay.
that would be better, yes.
So section 13.1 and section 13.3,
Yes,
those references will be changed to Board of Selectmen or the designee.
yes.
Well, the Board of Selectmen is still gonna be active in every facet of this, but is your goal just to sort of eliminate the workload of the Board of Selectmen?
That's part of it. The other idea really is that, to some extent, you have a code enforcement officer, building inspector, his many titles, because he has that professional experience and he's qualified to review the plans and approve them. So just like the select board is charged with assessing functions and welfare functions, they don't actually perform them specifically. They designate somebody else to do those things.
But they
So-
act on the advice of council.
No.
They are ultimately
Tom
responsible.
reviews
but-
them before we get
But-
them.
but you
We
still
literally
issue-
just sign them.
I mean,
They
it's-
still
It's
sign
the only
them.
town in New Hampshire, in southern New Hampshire, where you go to the select board for building.
And it's really ridiculous
It's
because
cumbersome.
it's very cumbersome for homeowners, scheduled contractors not realizing they need a building permit, happens all the time. Or contractors are surprised to find out we require a permit for nearly everything under the sun and it affects their scheduling.
Does the board
And it
need to
shouldn't
say
take a whole
qualified
week.
designee? Because, I mean, granted, the select board wouldn't,
Well, that's the thing, you have to
wouldn't
trust them to,
and that's, the onus falls on them, but they are the Board of Selectmen, they're not gonna appoint
Right.
But
Your
what does
babysitter
what does
sign
Miles
it.
know about building permits?
Right.
No, he's only gonna act upon the advice
But
as
I'm just
provided
saying
by
Miles
right.
isn't
Qualified.
right?
No.
I mean, when I
We're
was
saying
a
he shouldn't be
selectman for
signing
years-
because he's not qualified.
When I was a selectman for years, I used to be the test pit witness for new septic systems. And I got $50 and I had to be paid cash every time I did it. On the Saturday, I'd make a couple $100. And finally I said to the board, the town, this is ridiculous. I know, I'm standing here saying, yeah, okay, yeah. And there's still towns that do that. And we got rid of it. And we said, the person that's doing it has to sign and certify that they know what they're doing, that they have to be licensed. But we got out of it. And
But
just like
I'm just also thinking about as the public perceives that, you know, in the wording being qualified designee versus just designee.
I think that.
Would that be something that they would pick on, feeling that that's
I think the
allowing
word-
the
well, I
Board of
think-
Selectmen to be lax?
Well, first of all, I think the word qualified,
You're opening the door to what does that mean?
yeah,
And
I don't want anybody saying, well,
Without
Tom
defining
isn't
it.
qualified, you know, I mean, and I don't think you should say certified, because New
No,
Hampshire
that's
does have
a picky word
certifications, but
to you.
Not
not all
certified.
building inspectors are certified, so I think that you have three members of your board of selectmen. Hopefully that two of the three of them are gonna act rationally and hire a code enforcement officer that's qualified in some manner.
Or they'll do it themselves, because that's gonna be better.
No, because they're not, like he said, they're not qualified.
Well, right,
Per se to
so-
sign.
So it's
They're
already
acting on the
like,
advice.
Tom-
inherently
Tom-
flawed.
Tom-
already
Tom
flawed.
Tom issued building permits in Dover his whole career. Here, he reviews them and brings them to tomorrow and says, can you please sign it? It's kind of ridiculous. So I think it's a good change. And
Then
the
should it
other
say, as
thing is,
opposed to designee, should it say building inspector?
What's that?
Should it say building inspector,
No, because.
code enforcement?
well,
But then that also puts the onus back on him when maybe there's a time that he's unavailable.
Then the board, this is board of selectmen or the designee.
So
So
probably
that at
or the
least there's
designee is the best
flexibility.
way to put it.
Right.
Tom's on vacation for 2 weeks and the board feels comfortable issuing a building
It
permit?
may appear less binding, but it's the board of selectmen that assume the responsibility to make a proper decision that someone is.
And remember, every building permit in New Hampshire is appealable. So if you're aggrieved by the issuance of a building permit, you have 30 days to appeal. So,
Okay, I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah.
language then.
so I would say it would be, the zoning amendment would be pretty simple. It's section 13.3 and whatever it was, 13.
13.1 and
One.
13.3.
Yep.
Okay, so is it sufficient to write a warrant article, do you suppose, to just say, are you in favor of changing all references
Yeah.
in section A
Yeah.
and B when it says
And
this
then you
to
can have the
this?
full text available at the polling place.
Okay.
Which is gonna be ridiculous, because it's gonna be 3 or 4 pages long, but if someone wants to read it, they can read it.
But you are referencing specifically what portions or what sections. Yeah, I
And
think
you can,
that's.
and then you can
that's
have a brief note what it means, that currently, if you've seen the language, currently the building, the board of selectmen issue building permits, this is gonna authorize the buildings, the board of
Right.
selectmen to authorize somebody to do it. So, yeah,
Okay.
simple ballot.
The other thought I had is I found a sample section of a zoning ordinance. I'm not sure where it was from, I don't recall, but it limits the number of building permits that can be issued in a year per contractor and per, as a percentage of overall building units or occupied units in the town. So that, as it's written now, this sample language, it's something like 3%, and so, it would still limit it to probably more than we would wanna see in a year. But I just wanna discuss our, vulnerability at potentially getting a really large development and a bunch of houses in really short order.
So, because you're new to the board, we had this discussion when Joe Falzoni proposed to do a
Mega Tri-City.
behind.
Right, market
Wendy-
basket,
Yeah, market basket, yes. And after that fell apart for whatever reason,
We bought
We
the
ended
land.
up buying the land.
the board hired Bruce Mayberry. There's 2 ways you can handle growth. You can have a growth management ordinance, which says you can issue, some towns will limit the number of building permits issued to so many a calendar year. I can't stand them, I hate them. The other option is to have an impact fee ordinance to say, we're not prepared, we don't have fire safety, recreation facilities for 100 more people. If that happened, we'd want more money. So we hired the planning, the board, it was either the Board of Selectmen or the planning board, hired Bruce Mayberry, who's probably written every impact fee ordinance in the state. He lives in Maine, in Falmouth, Maine. He did a study for us, it was very good, and basically he said, you can't have an impact fee ordinance. We don't have
But we
any.
do have references to impact fees.
We allow them, but we
Yes.
don't have them. We don't have
Right.
any bonded indebtedness, the school is
Right.
not overpopulated.
We do now, though.
What was that?
We have bonds now.
Right, I don't know what your school calculation is.
Year one now,
But if
yeah.
you're if you're busting at the, well,
That's
now you're really in trouble because you send your kids to another, you tuition your kids out of state. So, the only place you could potentially have a problem is with the elementary school.
Well, as far as school is
Yeah,
concerned.
you got fire,
but We still
police,
have fire, police, you know.
recreation.
But there were some
roads.
administrative factors too when you're dealing with impact.
Basically, what he
fees.
said was that the cost of
Yeah.
remember, basically what he said was the cost of administering the
That was the administrative,
impact
yes,
fee was gonna outweigh the money you brought
I
in.
agree with that.
Yeah.
So,
Very specific.
And
how
then
you
on
use
the
this
other
money.
side, the town does have the ability, like every town in New Hampshire, to say, you can have an interim, a moratorium on growth. Now, where it doesn't help is when someone comes in with a 300 lot subdivision. You can't stop that.
right,
But let's say you get a 20 lot, then a 30 lot, and then you say, whoa, we can't handle this, we better stop, we gotta
how do you
put the
do that,
brakes
what's the
on.
mechanism for that?
You can, if you read the statute, it's pretty, there's a pretty simple method. You have a public hearing and you adopt an interim,
For what, like a year, for like a
yeah,
specific?
I think it can only be for 1 year, until you study the problem and figure out what you're gonna do. This is what I'll tell you though, I've been here a long time, I think that you have a very good zoning ordinance. I really don't see another big development happening in this town. I mean, we have.
But not everything is protected though. Like some of the, hundreds of acre, some of the.
You have a lot of land that people think is conservation land that isn't. It's
Right,
held
that's
by
what I'm
big
speaking to.
families. No,
Right.
and, or by families, there are a few families that own a lot of acreage that aren't in conservation.
Right.
And yeah, if mom and dad die and, the little kid says, I see dollar signs, it could happen. I don't know what to tell you,
So what is your experience with growth ordinances that you don't like?
Well, I don't, because I hate to see any town manipulating growth. And Phil was, I work in Elliott, Maine. Phil was just talking about Elliott, Maine. They had a growth ordinance for years. They issued 16 or 17 building permits. York, Maine did the same thing for years and years and years. And they were so what happened was, like in York, they would issue no more than 70 new home permits in a calendar year. Well, during the recession, they were issuing 20 or 30. No one was building houses. When the economy's good, they were hoping, people were trying to build 120. So what was happening was, people would buy land, want to build a home. At one point in the heyday, in like 2008, the waiting list in York, Maine, was 49 months to get a building permit. Is that fair? Can it make someone wait 5 years, 4 years to get a permit? Then the economy crashed. People made, had made investments, and then their land was worth half of what it was when they bought it, because the town was manipulating
Okay.
the growth. That's what I don't like about it.
So I can throw my 2 cents here, which is I'd like to look at some of the language of some growth statutes. I mean, I think it's worth looking into, and I do understand your perspective, John, and
Yep.
I even think I heard through word of mouth, you actually got one building permit by staying all night overnight, staying in front of the
I got
building.
many of them, yes.
Okay, so I know you've had experience with
Yeah,
that, but
I do.
I would like to look at that issue.
Sure.
I do think that in the future, this town's gonna be under really substantial development pressure, and I don't think we're prepared for it. I don't think we are.
I know we're not.
Right.
So,
So what are we trying to limit growth all at once, or growth in general?
I think
Or,
my personal concern is about a singular development that is of substantial quantity of individual dwelling units. And my concern is not so much for the school, because I do think,
Yeah.
you know,
There's-
we can, I don't, you know, we'll see about when the time comes, but I don't, it's more about, fire, police, roads, infrastructure. And also our capacity here to process building permits and inspect them. You know, I mean, that sounds really mundane, but even that, you know,
You can't deal with that. You can deal with fires, you can do public safety.
well, as far as
And
impact
recreation.
fees go,
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
But-
but the town can't sit on their hands and say, like Rollinsford has, and I'm picking on you, and say, you know, we don't have any professional staff, we're open half hours. That's not an
We're gonna have to
excuse.
get with the program.
You gotta get with the program.
I get that.
But, so there's two approaches, as I said. One would be a growth management ordinance, or the other one would be to say, we don't have the infrastructure, we would, and if you don't think you have the adequate infrastructure, I would say impact fees might be the way to go. The thing I don't like about impact fees is, if you look at a town like Dover, I think Dover, when you pull a building permit, I wanna say the impact fees are in the $15,000 range, which, first of all, it's a real burden for somebody when they're building a home. But on the flip side, what does $15,000 do? That's what I, like, even if you built 40 homes and you brought in a couple $100,000, it's not gonna buy you a new fire truck. And
No.
maybe it's gonna buy you a couple police cruisers, but, you know, you know, unless you're issuing a crazy number of permits and it's a high fee, I don't think the fee is gonna keep pace with.
Well, the
the cost.
administration alone and trying to keep track
And
of
you have to spend,
justifying.
and the other problem is you gotta spend it within a given, I think, 3 years.
Well, you have to justify it, you
Yeah.
have to give it back,
Very
and you have
specific
to,
purposes,
Yeah.
right,
keep track of
so
the
it's
whole
earmarked for specific
Yeah.
things.
right.
But you know, you hired Bruce Mayberry to do it once, it wouldn't be bad, you know, I bet you for cheap money, he'd probably come back and sort of review it, you know.
I wouldn't mind a complete review, honestly, of the whole thing.
I don't think a
Not
whole
just-
lot's changed. I
A
mean,
complete review of the impact fees?
No, I mean the whole zoning ordinance. That's just my personal opinion, without understanding the cost involved.
I've gone through, I mean, the board's hired me to go through the ordinance in the past, I've gone through the site plan review regs. We can certainly go through it again. The biggest, what I will tell you is, your zoning ordinance is pretty good. You know, you don't allow small lots, you don't have sewer and water. I mean, you have sewer and water down here, but there's no developable land, so that's not gonna, you're not gonna get density down here. The way it was rather clever, the way you were gonna get density through behind Market Basket, and that was through Summersworth. That was where the infrastructure was coming from. That's now cut off. The approval for apartments behind Wendy's, Wendy's?
Yeah, when you
Wendy's.
said.
Shaw's, that's now gone, it's lapsed. We changed the ordinance, so that can't happen. So we cut off those two. Could it happen somewhere else? Maybe, I don't know where, but it could, I suppose. You know, I suppose you could poke sewer and water in from Dover somewhere, maybe? I don't know.
At their discretion,
Right.
you know.
So it's not a crazy thing to say, that you're saying, that, you know, that someone could do something of a large magnitude.
And they have every right to.
Yeah.
I just wanna make sure that we are prepared for that and can deal with it. I'm not looking to prevent it, I just
Yeah.
wanna,
Be prepared, and I think that's a good goal. I don't think it's gonna happen for March of 2019 in terms of zoning amendments. I think but I think if we wanna go through the zoning ordinance and make sure it's accomplishing what everybody wants it to accomplish, I think that's a good thing.
I think that's just sort of a good, I don't know
A
when that
goal.
was last done, so that's just, I think, a good practice
It's been
to
a
do
while.
every once in a while,
It's been a while.
But I didn't think that would happen for March.
Yeah.
But I'll send, since you wanna look at it anyway, I'll send out the sample ordinance that I
Yeah, no,
found.
I wanna look at it,
And I don't know if we could, I'll reach out to Bruce Mayberry and see if we can get that study, because I don't think I have it anymore. And I'm sure, Sarah, you was before your time, I think.
I remember being done, I remember one of the stickers was the administrative costs.
Yeah.
Because it's very specific what the money can be used for, it has to be justified,
Yeah.
that
What
there has to be
year?
reasons why you're charging this fee.
Oh, my God, I don't know.
Was Mike on the board?
Yeah,
He might have it.
Yeah, might be in history.
He might. I know
Yeah.
where.
You
Maybe
live
maybe
with
somewhere
them forever.
in that cave over there, I don't know.
Oh, maybe.
But Bruce, I'm sure, an email to Bruce, let me see if I can, I'll reach out to him, see if I can get it.
Okay.
It would be interesting for everybody to read.
I'm sure he has it digitally stored,
Yeah.
so you could just forward it.
Yeah.
Were you saying that you had your own ideas about changes to zoning?
Well, we've talked several times about, creating commercial, area. I don't know if we're prepared to haphazardly take a pen and say this is our commercial area. I think that's a worthy effort to undertake. I just don't know.
I just think it has to be the right area, though.
Mhm.
It has to be an area that works for an attraction for potential,
I think we have to engage the public heavily in that conversation.
Because that's where you're gonna reach resistance.
And they want it, they've said they want it,
Well, they want their
but
taxes
everybody
not to
wants
keep
it,
rising. That's what they
right,
want.
and so that's what they
They don't mind
say.
if they build by their house, they just don't build by my house.
Yes, so we have to,
Well, when I keep saying Miles, when Mike was gonna form an economic development committee, he had asked me what my opinion was, and I said, I personally think the only place in town you've got to expand commercial is along Oak Street. I think Route 4, if you try to go down Route 4, I think you go a little bit down Route 4. But that section of Oak Street is obviously on the Rollinsford side, there's sewer and water that run down it.
there's water anyway.
And I'm pretty sure there's sewer, but it's close enough to sewer.
Yeah.
That's
That
a big
would've
red
been-
flag at
The
that
problem
posted
is, there's
bridge.
not a tremendous amount of land there,
Right.
Plus the bridge, I mean, that really limits what type of traffic can go across there. It's got a weight restriction.
But it's,
And you have a rail.
I'm not suggesting you're gonna have a Walmart there, but, that corner may have been where you could have had a Rite Aid there, or something. I don't know. It's never gonna be a huge tax base for you, but it could have been something.
Aren't there firms out there that, and I'm not shooting your data down about hiring Mayberry, that Vermont Spending might hire someone to come in and say, these are ideas as to how you could attract, economic development, this is where I would recommend, meaning I being the firm would recommend that they would have happened.
Well, and I would go one step further and pose the idea of having a charrette through Plan New Hampshire, where they bring in, according to whatever kind of idea you want to study, they bring in all the appropriate experts, and they engage with all the stakeholders. They kind of facilitate the conversation and engage people so that we can make sure that we're getting everybody involved and talking about, okay, so we say we want more commercial, where are we gonna put it and how are we gonna attract it and what is it gonna look like? Because the other thing is, we don't necessarily want big ugly box stores. How do we change zoning in such a way that we can require companies to build attractively in a manner fitting
Well,
with
we
the
have
rest of the town?
architectural design guidelines, which I think the Cumberland Farms, they did a pretty good job. You're not gonna get a big box store in this town, so I think it's not gonna happen. I mean, there's nowhere to put it, we have talked about pushing the commercial up from Cumberland Farms a little bit, but there's no land there that's viable for a big box store. Unless you rezone Route 4 in its entirety.
Rezone it, right.
Then it could happen, but it's not gonna happen in this town. But I think that's a good idea, I think it's too bad this town couldn't roll the clock back 30, 20 years, and we could have jumped on the mill redevelopment bandwagon, but the select board at the time, for many years, was completely resistant. I mean, we talked about it. Pat Macklin tried to bring it up, I tried to bring it up, and the board of selectmen were adamant about not allowing residential development in those mills. You look at what's happened in downtown Dover, Portsmouth,
Newmarket.
Somersworth,
Yeah.
Newmarket, and it's Newmarket is a different town now than it was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's a cool, funky town,
And that's largely why.
and that's largely why, because there's young people living there. And what were the selectmen afraid of? It was gonna be the ghetto, it was gonna be slums, there was gonna be a million poor kids in there. Well, go to Newmarket, it's a great, it's a cool
You
place.
can't rent a retail site
And
going down Main Street, because they're all full.
And
There's
unfortunately,
businesses everywhere in
right, and unfortunately,
Newmarket.
we've reached out to the Pellerins, and they're tapped out. They don't, I think they like the idea of redevelop, I mean, the Woolen Mill's a start, but it's not gonna do much.
Well, so what about a TIF district? Or otherwise trying to partnership with developers over developing certain areas. Maybe there's a way to, if the Pellerins want to and don't have funds, is there a way to, I don't know how to say, help them with that?
They have enough acreage under roof over there that they could create residential dwelling units. But we talked to them not long ago, a couple of years, 2 years ago, and Brian said, really in no uncertain terms, that they just ran out of gas, they don't wanna do it.
Well, and I think a lot of the money was like the fire.
They
Fire
spent all the resources bringing the buildings up to
Up to
fire
code,
code.
yeah.
And they weren't interested, so, I guess I don't mean to say they weren't interested, but they don't have the wherewithal to pull it off. So, that doesn't mean we couldn't invite them back in and see if we could do something, but, I mean, that to me is where things can happen.
By the way, who owns a softball field? It doesn't seem to be used anymore.
Where?
Next to the fire station.
Yeah.
No, next to down by the water. I mean, that used to be very
That's
heavily
Legion.
used by sports teams, and I never see it used anymore.
It's Legion property.
It's Legion property?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just saying, the little
Yeah.
water development
Waterfront.
site there, I mean, get some, that's space, in my opinion, is being, I mean, I like the bucolic qualities of it down there, but it used to be softball all the time, and I haven't seen a single game this year. In fact, in the last couple of years, walking down there. Have you noticed anything, Kevin?
There used to be a beer league that played there, every Saturday or every Sunday, but I haven't seen it in a few years. It's been very quiet down there.
I like your idea of getting some kind of help, though, around the question. Because I don't think the answer really lies in this board, and
Well, and I
certainly,
don't think we're not gonna drum up the interest. I mean, when we had the master plan public hearings, we might have had one person. No one was that excited about it, It just, so maybe like a plain New Hampshire shred, you might be able to get people out. I don't know. I mean, it'd be worth a try. I was involved with one in Littleton, New Hampshire, probably 6 years ago, and we had 100 or so people out in Littleton. But Littleton's, it's a little bit different, they're trying to grow, they're really interested in trying to figure out their identity. So, it'd be worth a try.
We had that one meeting that Nancy Carmer came to, she was talking about, potential development ideas, cause she works from Portsmouth, doesn't she?
Mm-hmm.
Actually, works
Do you
for the city
remember
of
that?
Portsmouth in some capacity, I
Yeah,
think.
do you remember that meeting?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I don't remember, I remember she came, but I
Yeah.
don't remember specifics, so.
and there was the one other guy who kind of lives over in that neighborhood too.
The builder?
No, there was another resident who actually was like, yes, I'm interested in talking about like potential development in the town, I'm gonna come to this meeting
Okay.
and provide input, which is,
It seems to me that the only development that we've gotten of late has been, largely been C&J. And the problem is, I'm not trying to put them down, but the tax value of those buildings is probably negligible. So it's, what you really want is, medical research facilities or, Rite Aids or, those things really, really have high tax values. But.
But those places like Route 4, they like that
That's
type
right,
of,
that's
even
right,
the
they like Route
traffic.
4.
They want that traffic and that exposure.
Yeah, I know, I'm not,
And
yeah,
we all know it's a
Sure.
legal battle to try to rezone 4, that's, God forbid.
yeah.
I mean, I think there's a natural connection between South Berwick, downtown South Berwick has come alive. You have the mill, I mean, it's kind of a natural progression, you have Fogarty's to, if you could revitalize the down, I don't know if it's possible to get higher end restaurants, and then no offense to the restaurants that are there, or businesses, but
But the thing is, John, it's funny that I bet you if you ask 10 people in Dover how to get to downtown Rollinsford, they have no idea that
They have
road
no
even
idea.
exists.
There's no reason to come here.
But that's right.
I mean, the road from South Florida, no one knows what, like, they're like, where does that go? And it's sort of, you're like, really, is that how, where do I go here? It's not, people don't know where downtown Rollinsford is. They live 10 miles away.
But a lot of the population likes to keep it that small secret. They like it to be a quaint little town that,
Well, then-
it's in the woods that no one knows about.
Then
They just don't
stop
like the
crying about your
taxes.
tax rate.
They don't like the taxes, so it's a catch-22.
Oh, I know, I hear you, yeah.
But then you also look at some of these studies, there's a cost involved with that. And, you know, it's another-
Well, the charrettes are not, they are free.
No, what Kevin's saying is that there's a cost of commercial development, I think is what
No,
he's
the
saying.
cost of some of these studies and some of these.
Oh,
outside-
So if we were to hire an expert, yes, that would cost money. If we're gonna hire a Plan New Hampshire and do a charrette, those are free of charge, except we have to provide meals. And if, they typically involve an overnight, in which case, whatever experts they provide need to be housed by residents. We have to find places for them to be. But that's really it.
Or pay hotel costs.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
not,
yeah.
It's a bit extra room.
But theoretically, there's no other cost to doing that, which alone makes it really attractive.
but I think it would take something like a Plan New Hampshire charrette to drum up interest. I think if this board tried to do it,
I agree,
we'd accomplish nothing.
agreed. Okay, so,
How do you engage them? You just,
I'll find out.
yeah, and just,
Well, I don't know if they have,
They only do, I think, 2 a year.
yeah, they don't
Okay.
do a lot
So
a
you gotta
year, so there may be a
apply.
waiting list and, you
But
know.
it might not happen this year, but maybe, or I mean, in 2019, but maybe we get in 2020, I don't know. I think, pretty sure they do 2 a year.
But we can find out more information.
so just for theoretical discussion, if we rezone the area from Taylor Rental up on Oak Street, the idea is someone comes in and buys all those properties and knocks everything down, and that assumes everyone is willing to sell.
Sure.
Okay.
Or over time. I
Over
mean,
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the houses become a grandfathered use, very much like the industrial zone along Somersworth Road.
Yep.
Which is mostly houses.
Mhm.
I think they're allowed. I don't think they're grandfathered, I think residential is allowed.
They are allowed,
They're
yeah,
allowed.
you're right,
Yeah,
you're
they're allowed.
right, they're allowed.
Yep, they're allowed. But, you know, the other thing that it would do is, I can't remember, I know John might have been on the board, but the people that, next to the tracks, they try to get a variance to do storage,
Right.
self-storage, which I don't wanna weigh in on whether or not self-storage is a good thing, but it certainly would not have been a high tax generator. But they were denied.
Right.
But then, you know, the other question you have to ask yourself, if you were one of those property owners that's been there, I know there's a couple homes that have been there a long, long time, would you wanna live there now? I mean, the
Well,
traffic
there's
has
a
gotta
new
be-
one, there's a building permit in process for one of those tiny, non-conforming lots along the railroad tracks.
Hmm.
So maybe it's the one that got the,
Single family, yeah.
it got the.
Well, and I don't know if you know this, but some of the properties up the road, are for sale, and they're marketing them as like potentially like 8 and 9 lot subdivisions
Which one is it, what road?
along Oak Street.
Yeah, like in the 60s.
Yeah,
And
so, you know the black and white house, she does the
Mhm.
black and white awning, she has a lot of land behind her. And it comes down in back of like a bunch of
Under the
neighboring
car.
properties.
Clinton?
Mhm.
I don't think that is,
Yeah, my neighbor did.
okay, we'll see. Okay.
I mean, whether she could, whether she could, but I mean, how would that impact if somebody started developing that land?
yeah.
I mean,
You know, I
who would
mean,
wanna,
I don't think, I personally, we've been talking about, or I've been talking about Oak Street with this board for 3 years, 4 years. I don't think you're ready to do it this year, so it's not, I don't think it's gonna happen. in
there was a lot
2019.
of butter turnout for that ZBA hearing, and all of it centered around traffic, the impact of commercial traffic.
I mean, I travel that road probably 5 times a day. and
It's so
I don't know what
scary.
storage would have done, I don't think it would have affected it at all. I mean, that traffic is brutal already.
They were worried about trucks turning out. I
Could
mean,
be.
even Andy Pottery, came out.
Yeah.
But
Um,
theoretically, I mean, it would be more volume, but if you put like a plaza or something that's like set back from the road with a few businesses in it,
Mhm.
you could put a light and have more controlled traffic on that road commercially.
I think the problem is that bridge.
Yeah.
Well, right, it's
Like-
realistic.
Yeah. You don't have a lot of room for error.
Well, right, and it's red listed, so.
Oh.
What is the plan to address it, or, I know that we're kind of waiting.
It's a
In
state,
Dover.
it's a state bridge, it's
Oh.
not our bridge. It's on our list because it's half hours, but it doesn't belong to us.
The state replaced a board about this big about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, because it was a
Took them
big
half
chunk.
day.
Well, it's just ridiculous that we have like wood plank board bridges on such a major road.
Yeah.
It is quaint. Okay.
You had mentioned at the last meeting, and as one of these topics, accessory dwelling.
Yep, accessory dwellings.
Oh, yes, we have to get our ADU language up to date
Yep.
because it's not compliant.
So do we want to allow them attached or detached? Oh, either way, do you care?
I would say that we keep it as much the same as possible. We have to change our square footage.
Yep.
And we have to allow them in all districts.
Yep.
But otherwise, I mean, and that's as far as I was gonna go with it.
Good.
But, you know,
Do we just have to change the definitions, or?
Where they're allowed,
Oh,
on the
okay.
size.
yeah, there's,
Pretty simple change.
we just wanna make sure we hit it in all the spots though.
Yep.
Yeah.
Did we do, is the special exemption under, C1 fixed in both places?
We get that for,
Yeah. Is that still a problem, or was that rectified?
I don't think it was.
I don't think it was rectified either.
So we need to fix that too.
That doesn't need to go to, it does need to go to.
Yeah.
Anything
What
in-
what are you talking about?
I'm talking about how, Blue went through his process and still needed
Oh,
special
right, right, right,
exemptions.
right, right.
Discovered
Yes,
it, no.
no, that needs to be corrected.
Sarah, where is that?
That was under special exceptions.
I think it's, so is it in the table of uses?
No, it was,
Adult cabarets.
yep, that's where it was.
What page are you on?
He's looking at it.
No, I haven't found it.
Where are you proposing adult cabarets?
No, there's,
So accessory, page 48 is accessory dwelling units. John, are we,
Okay,
non,
so, sorry.
well, I was just wondering, are we non-compliant about ADUs in any other way besides square
No.
footage and?
No, nothing, not to my knowledge.
Okay, so section 8, special provisions was where we had the issue with,
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Lewin.
Oh, sorry, use your phone.
I have plenty.
Okay.
So, it was, section
10.
8.1,
No,
3.
no, 8.2, 10, isn't it?
Well, no, because buildings containing multiple dwelling units shall contain no more than 6 dwelling units per unit,
Yeah.
per building, that's.
That's 8.2, 8.1210.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. That should just be eliminated, I think.
What page is that?
48
Thank you.
on mine.
For some reason, I'm a page ahead.
Um,
It's like the master
oh.
document.
It's right above ADU.
Yeah, I see it here.
Yeah, okay.
It says buildings containing multiple dwelling units shall contain no more than 6 dwelling units per building.
Yes. Thank you.
So is that something we want to delete?
Well, do we, can we modify it to just be zone specific? Does that make sense?
No, I don't, well,
Yeah, I
where
don't
else
know
you
if it
gonna, where
does.
else you gonna get, you know? I don't know what the intent was, because it's been there forever. But when we were talking about allowing residential development in the mills, we were gonna control the density by the site plan review regulations. They had to have adequate parking, blah, blah. We didn't care about density per building. So I don't know where that came from, but it's obviously been there forever.
So is there, so if somebody comes with a proposal for 8, they don't necessarily have a right to 8 if they don't show all the other requirements such as parking and.
Right,
Correct, it
Square footage.
supersedes all that.
right.
So
Well,
yeah.
square footage, is there, what is the, I mean, there are lot size requirements for multiple dwellings, but,
I would say that in large part, no one's gonna build anything. No, I don't think this is gonna be, I would be shocked if anybody built a
Well,
new building.
and it also says buildings containing 4 or more dwelling units must be connected to sewer and water.
Right, so it's downtown.
So, right,
Yeah.
which already limits,
You don't have a large building, you're talking.
Well, that's not
40
true. I
60
mean,
units.
they could have poked it in from Somersworth, they could have poked it in from
well,
Dover.
that's true, right.
But I think those have been, I don't think that's gonna happen now, because I think the land's gone. But I suspect that this is, I believe this is, most of these conversions are gonna happen down here.
This is what got them into trouble.
Yep, section 10. I mean, what controlled the Blue Mill was space. I mean, he just didn't have anything, he ran out of park.
I mean, he did do the best he could with what he had to
Yeah,
work with,
yeah.
he made a great attempt.
Yep.
Okay.
So I guess we just need, I mean, if we're gonna track stuff, I mean, that's something we ought to consider either modifying or deleting.
Is there a feeling of the board about one versus the other?
I didn't bring a copy of the book, I feel like I need to read it. I mean, I think. I
How would you
better-
modify, what would you change for wording if you wanted to modify it?
I don't mean
I would-
making it,
I would
just
delete
even
it.
seeing-
I was thinking striking myself.
Yeah, I was, because
I think with the rest of these conditions, this one doesn't make sense. Because
Yeah, there's
If
a
you're
lot,
gonna
there's a
put
lot to fit in
It's
the
kind of
first
a-
time.
80
Yeah.
unit building, you gotta have 120 parking spaces, right? So, I think it is a good point.
So I'd rather see it stricken.
I think I'm fine going on the rest of the board on that, I mean, I'm not gonna be stupid.
Can I bring up a bad topic?
Always,
Shared
absolutely.
driveway subdivisions? No, okay.
No, really, if there's something we need to address about
I
it.
just, I mean, it was something that was, obviously near and dear to Dave Nyland. It took him 3 or 4 years to get approved. It was, I mean, it was written for him. I don't like it. I never liked it. I don't know if it's, I think
Delete it and allow it to be grandfathered where it is.
it's his is done, it's approved, but we.
Well, there's
you
another
know-
one.
Is there another?
Gagnon Hill Road.
Oh, right, yes, so there's 2. I think you ought to look at those and say, are those accomplishing what we want them to accomplish?
I don't
If they
think
are,
so, because they don't meet road standards, so I think to my mind, they're a fire hazard. Or we're setting up, a homeowner unknown liabilities for them. That's my concern about them. I'm also concerned that there's a perception that they are private roads, which is different because that's what the street sign says, which is not the same as a shared driveway, and that's for E911 purposes, but I'm afraid that somebody's gonna, the institutional memory, should it change around here, which is easy to have happen.
well, there's a recorded document that says that it's never gonna be a town road, but times can change,
Well,
In
right,
10 years,
so-
people can say, well, we can modify that, so, I don't think most of the board members ever liked that ordinance when it got adopted. Maybe, it might be worth just looking at it.
I'd be fine to get rid of it,
Yeah, well,
grandfather was there.
I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other on it.
I think it complicates things, and
What exactly does it say? Would you know
what page is it?
So it's 57, it's the amended one, it's road frontage standards. It's right under the.
So it might not be 57 for us.
Oh, I forget.
56.
Yeah, it's 55 for you.
Okay. So road frontage standards.
So what really is the point?
the point is to avoid building a town road, to create lots. I mean, it was,
So to not pave, to avoid a paving and maintain.
no, it wasn't, we didn't, it was such a god awful process with Dave. It was, the actual standard, I think, was determined by the Board of Selectmen. I think we washed our hands of it, isn't that right, Kevin? And said the Board of Selectmen have to determine what an appropriate surface was? And I think they let them have gravel, right? Is that,
It wasn't required to be paved, no.
but that was the Board of Selectmen that made that call.
That made that initial decision. Yes.
So, I mean, he could easily have built a town road, I think we got one more lot. It could, by creating this frontage.
So what's the advantage to a shared driveway then?
It was a significantly less standard.
That's expensive to build for the developer, for the homeowner.
I
It was
don't-
worded so that it was always to remain a shared driveway, never to be a responsibility
Okay,
of the
so
town.
let me throw a wrench in the conversation. Are you familiar with MS4?
Yeah.
So the less we pave, the better. If we allow more shared driveways, or if we change other regulations such that people aren't just automatically required to pave,
Yeah.
then that bodes better for us theoretically in future.
Well, if you have narrower roads, it bodes better for you.
Well, right,
That
that's,
isn't gonna happen with your fire department. So, it happens
Right.
with fire departments everywhere, but not here.
But you don't usually have people that are willing to step up and pony up for money for pavement. It's a significant cost. Most people try to get away with as minimal as possible, and that leaves you less, impervious surface. So it kind of
goes both
takes care of
ways.
itself a little bit in that sense. No one's ever argued that they want to put down more pavement. They always would rather use gravel. I mean, even the most recent Pepin thing, people didn't want to pave parking spaces. I mean, when it was last proposed to the town, some of the changes to this, I feel that it was the impression of the planning board that it wasn't going to go through when it went to town meeting, and some changes did take place. So the public kind of spoke on that behalf, and I know it had some strong supporters with it, and I know Mr. Nyland was,
Well, and it was
Quite a
on the
campaign
ballot
for it.
it was on the warrant articles for a couple of years.
to make some modifications.
Three or four.
Yeah, to finally get it through.
Yep.
And then there was an attempt to repeal that failed. Is that-
I think on
does
the
that sound right?
board's part.
Yeah.
The board suggested the repeal,
Yeah,
if I remember right. Do you
Yep.
remember any of that? And it failed. I remember discussion. This is going back a few years.
I just think it's, you know, again, it wasn't, this is not to slight Dave, it was, you know, because Dave worked hard, you know, he had something, he had something worked out in his mind for his own property. It's just so unique, I mean, like in one section in here, the shared portion of the driveway shall not exceed a half mile in length. I mean, we don't allow.
I mean, it's worded, so it's almost impossible to have another
I'm just saying-
project fit so neatly
Well,
into
right,
this guideline,
right,
this
that's right.
template.
It's
It almost excludes the majority anyways.
Right.
Which to me would be say, just delete it. I mean, if it's been used once or twice, what's the likelihood of using it? It was a royal pain in the neck to
But why
administer.
delete it if the impression is that it would have to be a perfect scenario to have anyone plug into it again?
Then leave it. Yeah, maybe you're right. If you don't think it's ever gonna get used again, leave it there. See what happens.
Well, but if we really don't want it though, let's remove it. Why would you keep it if you don't really
Well,
Because
want
then
it
sometimes
used?
the feeling that you put out there is that, you know, the town is so anti anyone developing anything and moving forward and trying to, you know, make their investment pay off a little bit more.
So
by
you
making
think,
things
well,
harder
then
and
what are
harder
you
to pass
creating a
through?
false perception though about, as you say, this, you know, very specific template that is not.
It's not, right, it would have to fit in there perfectly, it'd have to be a perfect overlay template, but it's not impossible. As opposed to saying, no, we don't wanna do that anymore, and then having someone that decides, like Dave, to, you know, put on his boots and fight for it again.
I think we need to think about it and bring it up again in the future, I mean, maybe next session, something I hadn't really thought about,
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah.
one way or the other.
I also
Yeah.
think the number of articles that put on the ballot, like if this is the fourth or fifth thing, people would stop reading.
And my advice always is to not constantly toy with it in ordinance. Unless it's causing a problem, as Kevin says, maybe you let it go, because I don't think people wanna see 5 or 6 amendments every single year.
All these little tweaks and
Yeah.
change this wording, change that.
My feeling though is, that, you know, I've sort of got mixed feelings, if it's not gonna be used, we don't like it, I would like to see it go, but if we have 2 or 3 other things that are more important, then maybe you go with those. I threw it out
Okay,
there,
so,
because I've never liked it, I didn't like it from day one, the board struggled with it horribly for many, many years.
okay, but to that point, we already have select board or designate,
Yeah.
and we have, ADUs and the, section 8 special provision
maybe
section, so we
that's
have 3.
Then maybe that's enough.
Do we really wanna entertain anything else on the ballot?
The only thing that I've brought up before is, and again, the language in front of me, but there's that new statute that passed that said that you can put a limit on how long an unutilized site
Oh,
plan
vesting.
can, and I think that's, with all due respect, more important than the shared driveway issue. I think, I worry about how many site plans this board grants that aren't used, and then suddenly we don't even know how many are lurking out there, so I think that's a more important issue.
But if there's been no zoning changes or any changes that specifically change the criteria under which that project was approved, you know, if it fit under the plans as they sit, and nothing changes 5 years from now or 2 years from now, to require re-review when nothing has changed other than perhaps maybe a butter's, you know, ownership.
I mean, I think that what I worry about is
Does that seem
the institutional memory of the board. I mean, we don't even have, we're not even organized. And, I mean, if you were to ask me what site plans would be approved 30 years ago, I think I'd struggle.
But also falling back on that perception of the public in that, okay, I did my due diligence, I did all of my research, I had all my engineers, I got this plan through, and now because, you know, I didn't choose to act on it within a certain time period, I have to resubmit.
Here's what I'll say to that, as you all know, I do both, I'm a planning consultant, and I'm also a developer. And I will tell you that the cost of developing land is so expensive today that there's very, very few people that would go through the process and not pull the trigger. But I think John is right. Our, maybe lack of organization here, if someone gets a project approved and in 3 or 4 years, let's say the economy falls apart and they wait and we change and then they wanna build it, probably no one could remember what was important to us if it wasn't, accurately reflected either on the plan or in the minutes. So, and it doesn't say that if there's a 5-year recession, they can't come back to the board and say, hey, the economy's in the toilet, we really would like an extension. There's nothing wrong with
Is it
that.
really fair to that developer, because of other things, let's say the price of steel, that he decided to put a project off, and because we are somewhat lackadaisical in our bookkeeping and our record keeping, is it really fair to that developer to have to resubmit and incur additional costs
I
for the
would just say,
project?
but
If
they
no
could-
zoning
but
changes
they
have
could ask for an
changed, have
extension.
happened.
I mean, do you want it to be, do you want it to be good for 20 years? I mean, at some point, you gotta say, hey,
Oh, I agree with the timely limit,
yeah, I'm just,
but if you're gonna put it out 5 years, then it's already all forgotten anyways.
You
So
have
then
to
you would
draw the
move,
line.
then you would move to 2 years.
all I'm saying is that there's no, I don't think, if someone from Manchester is getting a Cumberland Farms approved, and they have to come back in 2 years to ask for an extension because for some reason, the economy went to heck, they couldn't figure something out on their end, I don't think that's unreasonable. They could do it by letter,
that's
they could do it
not-
in person.
Right, and I agree, the guy
I'm
that's
not
doing the
saying they need
Cumberland
to
Farms,
reapply.
he's already got his funds in place, all his financing, it's a done deal, he's breaking ground the day after the approval. But that's not every person trying to develop something. So is it fair that the little guy trying to do a project versus the big guy trying to do a project, you're gonna hold them both to the same standards?
So we're talking
We're
a
not
number of
standards.
years here. We're
Yeah.
So Kevin, what do you think is fair for a term?
I mean, if there's been no changes in zoning, there's nothing that has changed that would make that plan not fit under the way it was approved,
Well,
does there need to
so,
be a time limit? I mean, I think there is, but to impose one, I don't know if that's fair. You're saying just because the board has changed personnel, or, time has lapsed and our memory's not being as such, that person has to resubmit and incur whatever cost, or just his time alone.
well, so what if it's, forgetting institutional memory and all of that, what if you have a half-paved road and, a foundation? At what point do you have something that's unsightly or a hazard or something that is,
But that other thing would come into play. There's
Safety
some
and.
sort of.
Well, safety over a foundation,
there's
you know,
other
but-
issues. And I know there was an example you're coming up with, but someone that goes to the point that they're already going that far, chances are they're proceeding with the project. They're not gonna piecemeal it. They've got everything lined up and they're gonna see it to the end. But I'm saying if there's no changes to zoning, there's nothing that's changed that would make any aspect of that project not approvable. Why
So
should
let
you
me
have to
throw this idea, so on Clement Road, so, Claude got permission for that project, right, and he's actually started doing something, but let's say, down the road, someone comes in before us and they ask for a similar subdivision, and it's approved, there's no time limit, and we forget about it, and then someone else comes in sometime later and says they wanna do it, and you're considering the second new subdivision, having forgotten about the impact to the neighborhood of the other one. I don't know how it,
But is that the problem of that of that initial developer? No, the onus on that falls on us. And I think we have
So
an
remember-
obligation to people that are,
First of all, I think that, let's say Claude is a small guy. He's still a developer. This is how he makes his living. This is how I make my living.
sorry,
It's not unreasonable for him to say, to put constraints on him. If he ran a convenience store, he'd be constrained by certain regulations. I don't think it's an unreasonable thing to say.
but what sort of time limit are you anticipating?
what do you
thinking?
see out there for
I think
physical
4
ranges?
years is fine, is more than enough. I mean, if you don't act in 4 years, and if in 3 years and 8 months you decide you can't pull it off, come back to the board and ask for an extension. The board may say, no. If there's been no zoning changes, it'll take 5 minutes. But I think John's right, I mean.
But then if you're gonna go that far, there ought to be some degree or benchmarks that someone has to hit. Let's say that they do clear a small path. Okay, now they've begun the project,
That's well
but now
settled,
do they have an
that's well
open
settled,
window?
we don't need to worry about that, that's well settled in New Hampshire court, in New Hampshire, by case law. If they've done substantial improvement as defined by the courts, it's vested, you can't do anything about it. When
Like
it's
what
vested-
Claude's done from
No, I
putting in
don't
the,
think,
putting in the road.
I don't think that's the best thing, I don't know what he's done, I mean, I've got a subdivision I'm dealing with right now in another town that's 5 years old, they paved the road, 18 lots, they put one house in. I'm arguing that it's not vested.
With a house on it.
One house and 18 lots and a binder course of pavement.
You don't think that's vested?
No, no, 18 lots in one house?
So 18 lots in one house, the road, a road.
In a
So
road that was
the guy's, $1 million into it and he hasn't, you don't think he's begun the project yet?
Oh, it's begun, I don't think it's vested. Now, I'm just saying that this is an example where I don't think it's vested, that a court may disagree with me, but, you just can't go in and grub out a road, throw in a foundation and say, I'm vested for perpetuity, that doesn't fly. At some point, a court's gonna say, yeah, you've done enough, you're vested. I mean, there was a huge case years and years ago, if you guys know Meredith Bay in Winnipesaukee, somebody was gonna build a hotel there, they put in like $500,000 foundation for a hotel, the economy in the 80s collapsed, that foundation sat there for 3 or 4 years, they went to build the hotel, the town said, no, you can't build it, they sued the town, went to the Supreme Court said, you're not vested.
Really?
Yeah, so, a lot of it's case by case, but, I would say that, again, Claude building one house and maybe roughing in the road, that's not vesting. If he paves it, puts 2 houses in, maybe that is,
Yeah, but I think proportionately,
And
you're
we're
looking
picking-
at one house is on an 18 house subdivision versus putting the road in on just a 5 lot subdivision is
A road,
Different
a road with
ratio.
5 lot, yeah, that could be it.
but it's not really even a road, it's just the gravel core, it's the
Yeah.
it's the foundation of a road.
And we don't have to worry about that because the zoning hasn't changed, nothing in the zoning would prevent it. from
Exactly,
doing
nothing
today.
in the zoning has changed.
But
that would make that-
I do think that the idea of, just having an open-ended approval is foolish.
Miles, you haven't really weighed in, or Glenn, what do you think?
That's exactly where I was
I'd
going.
like to, we know where Kevin and John stand.
I could really go either way, I mean, I see the arguments on both sides. I guess I'd want to hear, like, what are the advantages of having a vesting so that you can allow, obviously the ownership hasn't changed, so you're not allowing.
Well, ownership has nothing to do with it. So, you could sell it.
Yep,
But, so that's off, that has no bearing. It's what's been done or what hasn't been done, how long the approval is good for.
but what's the advantage to having a vesting schedule, or to?
I wouldn't call it a vesting schedule, I'd call it maybe a start schedule. I mean, vesting is different. Once they've completed enough of the site work to be vested, then it's good, then they're protected forever. So how long of a period from the approval to vesting do they get from this board? That's the question.
But what's the benefit? And your question
Well, I
is,
think,
what's the benefit there?
Miles is speaking,
No, that's the question.
I think Miles laid out, John laid out what the benefit was. We approve other things, things change, we forget things. I just, you had approvals laying out there, no minutes land for years. I don't know.
I do worry a little bit about how we would enforce this, since we couldn't, do we have things lingering out there? I think anything approved now, I don't think can change.
No.
Right, would just be applied
Just moving forward.
prospectively, not retroactively.
Right.
Essentially, it would be on this body or the administration of the town to notice or remember that something got approved and notice that it is not much done. And that's an interesting question, whether, I suppose, the planning board would, send a letter and let them know that it doesn't appear as though your project is vested according to our regulations, and just notify them. I mean, I think, because we have the benefit of living in a small town, we're all
Yes.
residents, and we all, somebody would have to say, hey, why don't we check on when that project was approved?
I don't know,
You
I
know.
mean, in all my years here, I don't know of any case that's ever happened. I don't know of any project that was ever approved that wasn't active, that didn't get built, in a timely manner, but I could be, I could be missing something.
The longer you allow it to go before requiring vesting, I think makes it less enforceable, because we're gonna not remember when it was approved and,
Right.
you know,
Well,
Not remember
John's on the
things.
zoning board, I mean, I've been on the zoning board in my town for many years, and when we grant variances, we always we always say that this variance is only good for a year and a half or 2 years, or whatever the circumstances are, and if it's not acted on, then it's null and void. And the reason is, that if you grant someone a variance, and their neighbors sell, they, you might create new abutters or something, and we don't want something being acted on that someone wasn't aware of, so we always put time limits on. Once the variance is, once it's acted on, then it's obviously good forever, then the run
so is
of the
that
land.
something that you would say you put on, you know, have on a plan, is that, you know,
Sure.
you must be
Yeah, we
vested
approve,
by?
we approve a site plan, and it says, unless active and substantial completion of the project is, active and substantial completion of the project has to start within 4 years of the date of the approval, the day of the approval of this plan.
How are you feeling about this?
I mean, I don't see a big reason that it can't be said that from here on, when you come in front of the board and you get this done, that it's added in somewhere that within 4 years, you've gotta make a obligation to finish this or come back and ask for an extension. I mean, I don't think that asking for an extension is too far out of the realm, but, you know, just that when they do the plan and we say, okay, the plan is good, we're saying that according to subdivision regulations and everything, you've got 4 years and ask for an extension within 6 months or 4 years and, you know, or whatever, at the 4-year date. I mean, it's arbitrary number, but I mean, I understand
I
that
just
we've
want that
got
number on,
stuff.
it could be 2 years, it could be, whatever.
So I assigned myself the homework of looking at growth management ordinance languages. I also assigned myself homework of making some calls about vesting, especially and coming back to the next meeting with information on both.
Thank you. Also about, when you do that, I'm interested in what, I kind of feel like 4 years is a long time, and I think 2 or 3.
Sure, but that'd be part of it too.
Yeah,
Is-
to see
Yep.
what other towns find is a reasonable timeframe.
You
for
must know
vesting.
what other towns,
4 is standard.
Is it?
Yeah, but, look, let's see what John finds out.
Yeah, thank you.
Well,
Okay, so that's 4 potential changes.
So we may want to avoid the shared driveway issue, because that doesn't include the shared driveway issue. Vesting,
That does not include shared
ADA, the
driveways.
verbiage on the designee, and
The special exemption on,
number 10.
yeah, special divisions. So that's 3 if we do driveway, that's 4 if we do driveways, that would be 5. So, we're SB2 now, where every single thing is gonna be in the voting booth. So, we might have some voter fatigue, I don't know if that's a real term, but, you
Well,
know.
zoning's always been voted on.
Mhm. Right, I know, but,
But you'll
and
have
so
a
it
long-
should be at least like closer to
You'll
the
have a longer
top.
ballot.
Yeah, we're gonna have a lot longer ballot now.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with Kevin, that deal with the shared driveways later, it's not, I don't think it's an issue.
and we didn't have, by the way, anything on the ballot last year, we didn't get a collective act together, so I don't think it's unreasonable to ask the voters to think about 4 things this year, we asked them about 0 last year.
But the SB2 is a new thing this year, so
Yes.
that's what we should be
So
doing.
is everybody okay with not addressing shared driveways until the
I'm
following
okay
year?
with it.
Then, okay, we'll do that then, all right. So, this is October, so at the November meeting, let's plan to set public hearing dates.
Okay.
I will look into what the statutory requirements are about, it has to fall within,
It's on, NHMA's website.
Yeah, I have it, I just need to reference it.
So our next scheduled meeting is November 6th, which I would recommend that we don't meet that day,
Right,
since
yeah.
it's election day.
It is election day, elections are not gonna be held here, but, we of course wanna make sure that all of you have, and any of our applicants and attendees would have the opportunity to vote, so,
Yeah, I mean, it would be, we would meet as the polls close, but I'm expected to be there to,
so that makes already a very long night for
Veterans Day is
you.
the 12th.
is that right?
Yeah.
So we're gonna be,
Can you do it on a night not this?
we could do a Wednesday, well, although we're getting into budget season, so, you know, Wednesday night's budget committee meeting, so we're gonna conflict with them if we go to a Wednesday.
But the 13th would be, did you say there's something on the 12th?
My phone tells me that the 11th and 12th is Veterans Day, the Saturday, Sunday.
Oh, well, we would be the 13th anyway.
Yeah, so
Oh,
Tuesday,
yeah,
yeah, we could do
Tuesday.
Tuesday the 13th.
I'm good with that.
We're good with that?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
I think, I like Glenn's idea, by the way, I think Glenn articulated it, having a sign, if it's gonna be a good turn, I think, for voting, have a sign about volunteers at the vote.
Well, so we have to be really careful about that, because there really are rules about, you can't have,
Distraction.
yeah, you have to, there are lots of rules about what you can hang up on election day.
What about just a table with a flyer on it? I don't know.
That should be fine. I would say, why don't you bring that up to the select
Okay.
board, because the select board in conjunction with the town clerk run elections, and maybe you and the town clerk together can, I mean, you as the collective body, the select board can talk to the town clerk. Perhaps even Monday the 15th, when she's coming in to talk to you about her budget.
Yep.
You can talk about election day and tables.
Yeah, we'd have to see if there's any money for flyers.
Well, maybe it's just a poster or a handmade poster with volunteer opportunities, you know, planning board, whatever the, maybe other
Yes.
slots available, you know? And we could take a couple people. But it would be bad
Well,
to have
'cause,
you also.
Yeah, Patrick, as you know, is on long-term leave, and I don't know if he's coming back, I have no insight whatsoever. But, yeah.
There should be something we can do on election day, since we'll see lots of people. And if nothing else, we can talk to the people we see there, 'cause I'm sure.
And that's
we're all
really why I
positive.
think you'll need the most action, because, I mean, no one's ever beaten down our doors to come to the planning
No.
board, so,
The library, no one cares.
I try to talk them up. My problem is that like my peers, like, I talk to parents like who have kids my kids' age. They're all like, well, I have soccer, I'm good. I mean, they're so wrapped up in their kids like in 10 million sports that they don't have any time. Or like the colleagues that are already on stuff.
Yeah, the people who can already
Yeah.
do stuff.
Oh, the news would be great if the Kavanaughs, but I know. They're having a ZBA issue.
Oh.
So
Yeah.
they're not really happy with it.
No.
It's a whole nother kettle of fish.
Nonetheless, if they wanna let that rest and at some time in the future wanna consider it, you know, I
Yeah.
still think
Oh, I
it's
just talked to
good.
her today. They're actually pretty cool about it.
Yeah, and you might, yeah, so, if you see them,
Yeah, and like the other people that I try to talk up are people who are retired, cause, you know, that's a lot of people that they have a lot more
Yeah.
time. Yeah. I don't know, people just don't see, I don't think that people understand like how much of an impact they can have on the development of their town,
Right.
being on the planning board. And it's, for most of you, it's very little work. I mean, you have
It
your
really is, but very little
consultant,
input for.
you know, you kind of know certain things. If you don't, you ask questions. I mean, Carolyn and I do pretty much all the heavy lifting of the applications and all that crap, so, I mean,
it's
it's,
really, yeah.
it's not that much of a commitment. It's like 2 hours a month. So, that's the
I
hard
think the
sell.
heavy lift for people is getting acclimated to the topic and feeling intimidated by, you know, having no idea what it's about.
Right.
Yeah, thinking you need to know construction standards or
Some, and
something.
they get bored.
It was a learning experience.
Yeah, we can change our name to the
Well, it could be, well, I think it's more accurate to call it like the land use board or land use management board, I don't know.
But if they would just come and see one, it's good because
Yeah.
they're not come and see, you know, it's,
They'd never come back.
no, it's, you know,
Video, having watched the video of the meeting, for the minutes, it's very compelling.
You
I
must be here.
I got rewind here, why?
it's not really, it's not real restrictive, short of don't eat a sandwich, you know, at the table, I mean, it's pretty easy to come and sit,
Yeah,
really.
all right, so we'll do what we can about talking to people.
You might, let's table the minutes, until next month,
Yes,
because
we'll
I
do
need to
that
get that
because you need merger
information.
information.
Or that waiver information.
Anybody have any other business?
No.
Motion to adjourn,
I'll make the motion.
Second?
all those in favor?
Nice job by the chair.
Yeah,
Very nice job.
thank you for stepping up. Much appreciated.
All right, good night, everyone.
It's the least I can do since he took the bigger role.
Good night.